The rain never seems to cease at this time of year. It pours from the sky in its unending grief, as if longing for something unseen. Thunder roared in the distance, enough so to make the young woman flinch, but not enough to make her waver. A woman sat beside a man with an imposing brow and a large beard. The man wheezed and coughed, but kept hold of the newspaper in his hand. The front page read the following: "The Great Plague of London, 7,000 deceased." The man frowned at the words. How utterly preposterous! What on earth are the physicians doing? The lady next to him coughed into her handkerchief. When she pulled it away from her mouth, it was stained red with blood. Lady, I'm sure they are trying their best, my dear. Their best is going to kill everyone. Forget this rubbish. Amelia is still well and finally of age to marry. We will arrange for a suitor before she becomes sick. Lady, if we send her out there, then she will certainly grow sick. She should stay here locked in her room until it is safe to leave. Lord, no man will want a woman who has spent her only good years locked in her bedroom. But she will be safe. The lady held her cheek, which quickly reddened after the impact. The Lord glared at her behind his bushy eyebrow. You would do well to remember who she belongs to, who you belong to. The lady blinked, trying desperately to stop her eyes from welling up. Walika, please come here. Her voice carried through the house, the otherwise empty house. Time seemed to pause for a few moments before a woman with blonde hair skating behind her entered the room. She wore the dress of a maidservant and a natural expression that wavered just so after seeing the mark left by the Lord's hand. She stepped forward, crossing the tiled floor with slow steps that seemed to match the pace of the thunder that roared outside. The lady nodded to the maid nodded back to the lady. The moon reflected from the metal object in the maid's hand as she swung it down into the Lord's throat. He let out a gargled scream. Blood splattered from his mouth, and he tried to speak. Tried to yell, but it was too late. He fell forward onto the floor, and the tiles darkened into a crimson red. He squirmed and crawled, searching for something that no one would ever know, before he fell still only a few minutes later. The lady stared at the scene. Her heart raced, and a laugh escaped her lips. Finally, you'll never hurt Amelia. I hope you rot in hell. The maid wiped the knife against a small white hand towel. The stains would never be fully removed. My lady, I'll deal with the body. I will help you. He is too much for you to carry alone. But my lady, you are sick, and I will get no better sitting here. The two grabbed him by an arm each and dragged him towards the stairwell, leaving a trail of blood in their wake. No other words passed from their lips as they executed their task. They reached the end of the hall and began to ascend to the first floor. The Lord's head hit against each step with a soft thunk. Thunk, thunk, thunk. The house was silent in all other regards. Two doors sat next to each other. Both were shut tight as the two women reached the top of the stairwell. The maid pushed open the door to the master bedroom and entered. The room was spacious and clean, with fresh bedding left by the maid just the same morning. On the wall above the bed, a newly painted family picture. The two struggled and finally lifted the man into the bed. His face was stuck in a terrified expression, and his clothes were ruined. You will protect Amelia, right? I'll do anything you desire. Then let us begin. Lightning struck somewhere in the distance, lighting up the otherwise darkened room and showing many things that should have been left unseen. The maid removed her shoes and crawled into the sheets beside the corpse, while the lady dipped her fingers into the Lord's wound and drew a line of blood around the bed. She spoke softly to no one in particular, chanting words that should never be chanted. When she was done, she stepped over the threshold and approached the maid. Never let anyone hurt her. Protect her no matter what. I will, my lady. Thank you, Lalika. You'll never truly understand how much your actions mean to me. The lady leant forward and left a soft kiss against the maid's lips. It was brief and gentle, and something the two had wished to share for longer than either would admit. As the lady pulled away, the maid drew her knife, still smudged with blood, and brought it to her veins. Goodbye, Lalika. Goodbye, my lady. The maid bled out slowly, painfully, slowly. The lady gasped for air and clawed at her neck. Everything in the manor became still, everything apart from a young lady named Amelie, who sat in her bed upright, feeling a deep dread in the pit of her stomach, and another young lady named Lelika, who stood over two corpses laying beside each other in bed. The young lady named Lelika stared at the maid in the bed. Her own face, her own blood seeping through the bed. And yet, here she stood. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw a different person entirely. She was no longer the maid. She was Lelika. Her voice was softer, her hair longer. It worked! When she turned back towards the bed, Lelika froze. Both of the bodies were gone, and in their place, two skeletons. How long has it been? She walked towards the door and found it locked. Digging through the tattered clothes of the long dead maid, she retrieved the key and opened it. The door beside the master bedroom sat ajar, just enough for Lelika to peer in. Amelie sat on the end of her bed, staring at herself in a small handheld mirror while brushing her hair. She hummed a quiet tune, but froze as her eyes met Lelika's. Who are you? I'm Lelika. Lelika, but your mother told me that you had a maid named Lelika. What a coincidence. What are you doing here? How long has your mother been gone? My mother? I saw her. She frowned and clutched her head as if she hadn't quite remembered. She frowned and clutched her head as if she couldn't quite remember. I saw her just this morning. I see. Your parents have left to be cured of the plague. They have asked me to stay here with you until they can return. Really? A cure truly exists? That's right. So until then, how about we be friends? Amelia's face lit up, and their eternal friendship began. How many years had passed since that day? Neither could tell. Time seemed to stand still within that manor, out in a field in the middle of nowhere. And that's the way Lelika wished it to stay. Lelika, a letter has arrived. What? Her blood ran cold as Amelie stared at the envelope in her hands. When was the last time we had a letter? How exciting. Perhaps it's mother writing that she will return soon? Perhaps so. Oh. Oh? It seems to be addressed to someone else entirely. Perhaps it was brought here by mistake. Then we had best send it back. Give it to me and I'll have it returned. A peek wouldn't hurt, don't you think? Lelika watched as the first crack formed in her fragile world. I will dispose of it immediately. Give it to me. But it was too late. The letter inside had already been let loose, and Amelie's eyes had already taken in the words left for someone else. Sophia. Lelika, I think I will write her back. I will let her know that I received the letter by mistake. That isn't needed. Please. Just one letter. Thank you, Lelika. How many letters had arrived at their door since then? How many times had Amelie spoken excitedly about Sophia to her? Sophia. Sophia, Sophia, Sophia. It's always Sophia. Sophia is the crack in this fragile reality. Sophia. I have to get rid of Sophia. Lelika? Lelika's eyes opened with a jolt. I'm sorry, I'm a little tired. What did you say? Sophia says she's coming to visit. Another crack formed from the last. It sprawled across reality, threatening to shatter at any moment. Amelia, I don't think that's a good idea. The plague. She says that it's safe enough to travel. Now, in her letter, perhaps mother and father will return soon too. Lelika forced a smile. But we don't need anyone else here. We have each other. Of course, you are my dear friend, Lelika, but Sophia and I have been writing to each other for... She shook her head as if chasing off the beginning of a headache. For a long time anyway. I'm excited to finally meet her. Won't you be excited with me too? Can we all be friends? Right, friends. I'm sure we'll all be best friends. For an amount of time that neither Lelika or Amelia could truly comprehend, the house was suddenly buzzing with life. Amelia's footsteps were light and her days filled with excitement as she awaited the arrival of Sophia. And finally, to Lelika's dismay, the day came. The pendulum clock on the wall swung back and forth, ticking down the time. Lalika stared at it, wishing that it would slow down even further. 10 minutes, then 20, then an hour passed, as the two stood by the door waiting for a knock. She seems to be late. Perhaps she's not coming after all. Amelie, there's no need to make such a sullen face. Perhaps this is for the best. Amelie. She wrote that she'd be here, so I shall wait. With her face hidden from Amelie, Lalika scowled. You truly believe it's safe to have visitors during the outbreak? Lalika, I believe we have been isolated long enough, and Sophia has written that it is safe. I trust her word. She would not endanger us. And if your pen pal turns out to be a robber in disguise, what then? Amelie smiled, to Lalika's dismay. She has a way with words that only a woman could have. A lady robber, then? Nonsense. By the way, Lalika, have you seen my letters? I can't say that I have. A knock sounded at the door, instantly halting their conversation. Emily rose from her place and took a steady step forward before Lalika raised a hand to her. Allow me. Allow me to see if she should truly be allowed entry. The door groaned as it slowly swung open and revealed the young woman who had knocked at the door. She was drenched from head to toe. Lalika stared at her. Light hair and eyes, she looked almost like a kitten. Instantly, Lalika's dislike for this woman grew. Lalika stepped to the side just in time for Sophia to bounce through the door and wrap her arms around Amelie. Her blood boiled. She watched as the clothes she had carefully handmade become drenched by someone that doesn't deserve to even look at Amelie. Amelie! Sophia! Amelie's arms wrapped around Sophia in return, and Lalika turned away. My, you're completely drenched. Did you forget your umbrella, perchance? Oh, perhaps her umbrella got carried away by the wind. With a cool anger written over her features, Lalika shut the door. I didn't even think to bring an umbrella. The forecast said sunny all day. My fault for believing it, I guess. I can't believe you're truly here. Me either. About time, right? You're just as pretty as I knew you'd be. And you too, but what are you wearing? Seeing your house, I feel like I should have dressed up a little more. No, perhaps it is I that is overdressed. Lalika stood to the side, her arms crossed lightly over her chest. Her long hair reached down nearly to the wooden floor. Pardon my manners, my dear friend. Lalika is here too. I believe I wrote about her in the past. I remember. I've kept all your letters. Don't worry. As you should. Amelie side-eyed Lalika upon hearing her tone, but Lalika simply looked away. Ah, sorry, but is there any chance you have a towel? Of course. My apologies. I would usually have someone here to attend to us, but everyone's been sent home. Only the three of us remain. Let me fetch you a towel. Amelie disappeared down the hallway, leaving Lalika alone with Sophia. This really is a manor. When she told me about her house, I almost didn't believe it. Has no one told you it is rude to poke around someone else's house? Sophia walked straight past Lalika without even a notion of responding. Hello? You can't see me? Sophia ran her fingers along the edge of the table before reaching to pick up a book that rested there. Don't let her touch it. Don't let her touch anything. She'll break it all. She'll undo everything. She wants to hurt Amelie. Can't find out the truth. The windows shook loudly in the wind. With the flick of her small wrist, Lalika allowed the door to fly open, causing Sophia to whip around in surprise. It's so windy. Lalika locked in on the object that Sophia had been reaching for. She rushed forward and took hold of it, then quickly hid it behind a cabinet as Sophia reached to close the door. Phew! Amelie? Sophia spun around but looked straight through Lalika. Sophia? Oh, Amelie. Please, use this. Thanks, I'll bring an umbrella next time, I promise. Lalika watched as Sophia dried herself with the towel. Our towel. It's not for her. There can't be a next time. Then if you're now dried off, would you care for a tour of the house before the afternoon tea? That sounds great. On your right is the pantry and down the hall is the boiler room, but you shouldn't have any need for those spaces. Sophia and Amelie walked side by side, close enough to their shoulders almost touched. Lalika stared at the place where they almost connected. Lalika stared at the place where they almost connected, seething with quiet rage. These are all the guest bedrooms. I have spared this one for your use. If you find anything not to your standards, you can let myself or Lalika know. Amelie, I have a feeling your standards are much higher than mine. I've never been in a house that looks like this. No? Is your home not similar? Well, it's a lot smaller. There is no shame in that. You own your own property, yes? Yeah, I recently bought it. With your husband? What? No, of course not. I'm not married. Shut up. Your father allowed you to buy property on your own? Ah, Amelia, you speak just like how you write. I'm so surprised. Your voice disgusts me. And you speak quite casually. People usually say that about me. Being here around you makes me want to be more formal. What need is there of formality between friends? That's true too. Your words are poisoning, Amelie. This is the morning room and next door to the dining room. I'll be having afternoon tea in the sitting room here. So many rooms. Upstairs is my bedroom and the master bedroom. I must ask that you do not enter the master bedroom, as it belongs to my parents who are currently away. Of course, I won't go poking around anyway. Lies, you're lying. All this walking has made me parched. Shall we take afternoon tea now? Sure, that sounds good. Why don't you have a seat while Alika and I prepare our food? Oh, I can come help. Nonsense, you are my guest. It will be remiss of me to allow you to lift a finger. If you insist, but I'm happy to help anytime. Thank you, I'll be back soon. Please rest. Amelie? Yes? It's nothing. Take your time. Sophia slipped through a doorway and disappeared. Amelie smiled widely while Alika just stared ahead blankly. Isn't this lovely, Alika, to have a new face in the house? It feels like forever. Yes, how lovely. I'm glad you're having fun at the very least. Are you not? I'm always having fun when we're together, Amelie. Ah, I see. Are you jealous? Worry not, my dear friend, of course. Our friendship means just as much to me. I value you greatly. Just as much? Indeed. Come along, Alika. Let us prepare tea. Did you finish baking yesterday? The pastries are ready for serving. Excellent. I'll just fetch the tea then. Allow me, a lady of your standing shouldn't be doing such a menial task, should you? Should she? Don't be absurd. Even Sophia herself seems to be fine in the kitchen. Did you hear how she jumped to help? I should follow in her footsteps. What would your parents think of that? I appreciate the sentiment, but they took with them all of the staff. I have little choice but to prepare my own tea. I see. Then I shall attend to our guest. I wouldn't want her to become lonely. Would you? I'll only be a few moments. Of course, anything for you, Amelie. It'll be a good chance for you to become friends. I'm sure it will be. Lolika's smile at that moment seemed to hide behind it an intent much deeper than Amelie realized. The walls had eyes. Eyes that tracked Lolika's every move. They followed her as she made careful, deliberate steps towards the sitting room. They stared, their eyes bulging, judging. They had no mouths in which to scream, but Lolika could still hear their words. We all sacrificed ourselves for you. Hope, our only hope. Amelie, protect Amelie. Prove your worth, prove your love. Amelie, Amelie, Amelie. Under her feet, shattered glass pierced through her shoes, cutting her feet. You could feel the blood ooze out, pooling. It was warm, comforting. She looked up to find where the glass had come from. Then she noticed the cracks once again. Along every wall, every floorboard, even through the air. The world was fragmented. It was already broken. Not beyond repair. It's not, my lady. I'll fix this still. You can rest, please. Rest. I'll take care of everything. Anything and everything for you. She blinked. The world reverted to the way it should. The glass that lined the floor gone. The eyes that followed from the walls gone. Cracks that had begun to wrap themselves around Lolika's ankles had disappeared too. She stood in front of the sitting room door, which sat slightly ajar. Inside, Lolika could see Sophia staring out of the large window. Her back stayed turned as Lolika entered the room. Of course, it wouldn't have been possible for Sophia to turn and look at her, but Lolika still found herself taking careful, quiet steps. The window shook past the dark dead curtains. You who would attempt to defy your fate, why don't we see how long this little game lasts? Why don't we test whose love is stronger? I swear my love is unwavering, my infatuation, my yearning, my desire. You could never even wish to match it. Lolika pulled out a chair roughly, dragging the legs across the floor. Yet you dare to challenge me? You dare to test my love? Amelie, was that you? Amelie. Sophia took careful steps towards the chair, resting her hand against it. Or Lalika. Ha 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 ha. You're nothing. Sophia sat down in the chair that was offered to her while Lalika circled around as if a cat after its prey. But her steps paused as she heard something strange. Footsteps from above. The master bedroom? In front of her very eyes, Lalika watched the scene unfold. A scene that made her blood run cold and her body freeze in place. My lady! The lady of the house stood beside Lalika. Where before the two had stood eye to eye, now the lady stood taller than Lalika by at least a head. My lady, what are you doing here? The lady removed her shoes and stepped onto the table. Did you come to punish me? Are you angry? I promise I'll remove the plague that has entered our home. I swear it upon my undying love. The lady did not respond. Instead, she reached up and took hold of the noose. The rope wrapped around her neck exactly where the necklace that the maid had gifted the lady should have rested. Join me. Her eyes locked onto Sophia. Her hand was outstretched, waiting to be taken. Why won't you look at me, my lady? Are you truly so angry? Angry enough to despise me? For but a moment, as Sophia's outstretched hand came closer and closer, the lady's eyes turned slowly towards Lalika. They carried with it a message that only Lalika could decipher. Lalika's body shook. It trembled and trembled until she could bear no more, and she ran from the room as fast as her legs would carry her. If the hallway still had eyes, they weren't fast enough to follow Lalika. The floorboards, as if made of quicksand, threatened to suck her up and bury her deep within the house. Her feet felt heavy and laden. Every step was as painful as that brief glance. She raced through the hall and up a flight of stairs, past the stained glass window, which left a myriad of colors over the carpet steps, and past the doors that led to the master bedroom and Amelie's room. Closer, closer, until she arrived at the bookcase. She pushed it aside and entered the hidden room. The room behind the bookcase was small, and not a single window faced outwards, thus the room was near pitch black. Each wall was plastered with handwritten letters clearly for Lalika alone. Her eyes, frantic, finally started to calm as she took in the words left to her, for her, only for her. Lalika's eyes set on a particular letter. Dear Lalika, how wonderful to hear that you are doing well. I've been very busy this week, but most of it is boring, so I won't bog you down with the details. Do you know what happened just yesterday? Of course you don't. You weren't there. I was walking home when I found an abandoned kitten. Someone left in a box on the side of the road. How could anyone do that? Anyway, I took her home and named her Lily, after you. It is a little embarrassing, writing it out like that. I hope you don't mind. Yours, Marina. Dear Lalika, I've spent the past week studying. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy it, but everyone needs a break, you know? On my desk, I have a little cactus in a pot. To be honest, a cactus wasn't my first choice, but I've killed every other plant I've ever owned. Anyway, it bloomed. There's one beautiful flower coming out of it. I couldn't be happier. So that makes studying easier. I think your environment makes a big difference. How about you? Do you have any plants? I'm looking forward to hearing about it next time. Yours, Marina. Dear Lalika, today was tough. I tried my hardest, but still failed. Don't you think life is unfair sometimes? I wish trying hard enough was all it took to succeed. Sorry I'm whining, aren't I? I came out of my interview and it was raining. I thought, just my luck, but something interesting happened. A rainbow in the distance peeked out from behind the gray clouds. It reminded me of you, and then I felt a little better. I hope we can meet soon. Yours, Marina. She ripped a letter from the wall and clutched it to her chest, collapsing to her knees. She couldn't hate me. She couldn't. She adores me like I adore her. She entrusted her everything to me. Everything, Amelie. The letter dropped from her fingers that were neither cold nor warm. You want me to get rid of that disease, don't you? You won't accept me until I protect Amelie, is that right, my lady? I'd do anything you ask. If that's all I have to do, Then I will do it. I'll keep Amelia safe forever. Malika stood from the ground and dusted off her skirt. Her face, that had previously contorted in distress, had finally calmed, and a smile gently crept over her face. I love you, milady, and for you I will love Amelia too. I should light the sconces too. Where did I put those matches? Right here. Ah! You gave me a fright, Lika. Where have you been? Praying in the guest room for your dear friend, of course. How kind. Sophia's just praying for a bath at the present. I'm going to retrieve a towel for her from the linen closet. Amelia, I think it's best you send her home post-haste. What? Why would I do that? For all of you know, she brings with her the plague. Sophia says it's now safe to travel. It should be perfectly fine, don't you think? And what if she lies? She wouldn't do that. Sophia is kind and good-natured person. She would not bring any danger to us. Did you know that Sophia attends a local university? She lives by herself with no husband. She says that if I wanted, I could also study. Study? Study? She wants to live... She wants to leave? Leave the house? No. She can't leave. She can't go anywhere. She belongs here. She was entrusted to me. The lady of the house should not study, Amelia. You must stay inside the house and await your parents. But I'm sure Mother would want best for me. Perhaps while I await her, I could go to inspect Sophia's school. Amelia, you must stay inside and await your parents' return. But, don't you trust me? Have I ever tried to lead you astray? No, Lolika. I was just thinking that perhaps it truly is beginning to be safe. Look, I have brought today's newspaper. Do you see the title? The plague runs rampant. But any notion of leaving or studying away from now? Put any notion of leaving or studying away for now. Yes? As soon as it is truly safe to do so, then we shall. And you will be reunited with your family. For now it is just you and me. Thanks, Lolika. I'm glad you're here. As am I. Ah, the towel. Let me go retrieve it. Go ahead. Alone, Malika stared at the bathroom door, which was shut tight. Behind it, she could hear the water running. She could picture Sophia's body slowly shedding its layer of clothes before she stepped into the hot water. That image was enough to force her hand. The running water sloshed into the steel-lined wooden tub. A state-of-the-art system. No one else in the country owned anything like it. But how many years ago was that? How long had it been? Sophia leaned over the sink, her bone-white knuckles grasping either side of it. Her back was turned to Lolika. If she wanted, she could stab her in the back and be over with it. No. I need to keep Amelia's trust. No, she needs to leave or go somewhere she'll never be found. Or do it herself. Sophia lifted her face to the mirror, then froze. Her eyes bore into it as if she was seeing something she shouldn't. Lolika stared back, unmoving. Leave. Leave already. Who? One step at a time, maintaining eye contact to the mirror, Lolika crept closer, and closer, until the two were nearly touching. Why do you want to take Amelia away? Can't you see that she loves me? Not you? Your words are poisoning this household. If you don't leave, I'll kill you. I'll have no choice. I'll just kill you. Who are you? Sophia whipped around, but her eyes didn't focus on any spot in particular. To her, Lolika was gone. Haha. Lolika walked towards an open cabinet and pulled something out. The metal of the razor glinted. Lolika raised it up, and she moved to stand over the tusk. With ease, the metal cut into her arm. Drops of blood fell into the water, leaving tiny splashes where they connected. Blood still runs in my veins after all. Sophia rushed past Lolika, desperate to turn off the overflowing water before she froze once again. The water was deep, dark red. Her slender fingers dipped into the liquid as if she were entranced. One later at a time, she stripped bare, her expression hollow and lifeless. Lolika watched as her naked body stepped into the crimson water. Why not just end it here? You're scared, aren't you? Just sink down. Accept your fate. Accept it. A knock came from the door. Lolika's widened eyes went from the door to the young woman in the bathtub, then back again. Excuse me, I'm coming in. Lolika ducked behind the folding screen just in time to hear the door open. Sophia, I knocked but didn't hear a reply. I brought you a towel. Ah! She didn't wait any longer. As Amelia stepped into the room to set down the towel, Lolika quickly dashed out into the hall. Ah! Before Lolika had a chance to even catch her breath, the bathroom door opened once again and Amelia stepped out with flushed cheeks. Did you tell her that she must depart? No, Is something the matter? Are you feeling well? Your face is bright red. Sophia will stay until she decides to leave. No, no, she must leave now. Tonight, no longer. As you wish. I'm sorry, Lika, but I believe it is only fair after she traveled so far and she is my friend. That woman, that siren, look what she does to our Mealy. I will finish preparing the guest room. Let me come help, Sophia. When you're done in there, you can come to your room. From the other side of the door, Sophia's voice came in return. Okay, thanks, Amelie. The guest bedroom was freshly cleaned with new linen on the bed and a lit lantern beside it. Fortunately, Lika had prepared the room well in advance. You did a fine job of preparing the room so far. Thank you, Lika. Anything for you. I was thinking, tomorrow, if the rain has cleared up, we could open the greenhouse again and have morning tea there. It's been so long since we last used it. By now, a dozen cracks stemmed from a dozen other cracks, filling the entirety of Lalika's world. At any moment, even a breeze would make everything collapse. Didn't we already speak of this? You can't leave the house. But surely the greenhouse would be safe. No one else uses it, and it is only a few steps from the back door. It is unsafe. You know this. What's gotten into you? It is because of your friend? I just thought it would be nice at least sit in the sun. Then you may sit by the window in the dining hall. It is really so unsafe that even taking a foot outdoors would be dangerous? Yes. Sophia, I see you're done with the bath. Lalika crossed her arms over her chest, anger already rising in her chest. Where are you talking about the greenhouse? Were you talking about the greenhouse? Yes. Did you see it when you arrived? I did, but it looked as if the plants inside had died. Oh, that's impossible. It's barely been any time at all since the gardeners left. I'm sure the plants inside are more sturdy. Oh, that's impossible. It's barely been any time at all since the gardeners left. I'm sure the plants inside are more sturdy than that. Well, even if they have died, maybe we could go in and replant some things tomorrow. How wonderful. Have you not heard a word I said? It is unsafe to do so. Oh, don't be such a spoilsport. I think it would be perfectly fine. Well, it's getting late now, so I'll leave you to retire. If you need anything, my room is just upstairs on the left. Good night, Sophia. Poison dripped from her voice as Alika left the guest room behind. The house had a heart, and the heart was beating to the same rhythm as Alika's. It was frenzied on the verge of losing control. It echoed through her head, through the hall, through every corner of the building. Like Morse code, it was as if the house itself was telling her to do something. Get rid of her. Cut out the disease. Protect Amelie. Bit her thumb, pacing back and forth. Amelie will be upset. But Amelie doesn't need anyone else. She has me. She won't be upset for long, and she'll forget. That's right, she'll forget. Her breathing hitched in her throat. But what do I do? What do I do? She just won't die. My lady, what am I supposed to do? At that moment, Lika put her ear to Amelie's door, listening intently. How about coming away with me for a while? Away? Outside of the house? What about the sickness? Away? Outside of the house? It's okay now, you'll be okay. You could come stay at my house. I could show you around my school. You don't have to go through an arranged marriage if you don't want to. Alika's hand balled in fists at her side. You would do that for me? You are my dearest friend, and I actually... You think you can take her away from me? Alika's balled fist slammed against the door. Each one set a pain shooting up her arm, all the way to her shoulder. Inside, the voice went quiet. She doesn't belong to you. But Lika... Finally, Lika snapped out of her daze. At some point, Amelie had left the guest bedroom and was standing a short distance away from her, looking worried. Instantly, she took a deep breath and composed herself. But her heart still beat as loud as a drum, and the cracks that seemed to be centered around Amelie were still spreading at an increasing rate. It is late. You should retire to your bedroom. Yes, I shall. It is nice having someone else around, isn't it? I feel as if the manor is coming back to life. I hope we see Mother and Father soon. I'm sure we will. I shall see you to bed. Yes, please. The hallway was darkened with only a few sconces and candles lit along the way, and Lika relished in it. On a night like this, long in the past, she had sealed her fate, along with Amelie's, and tonight she would seal the fate of yet another person. The two rose up the grand staircase side by side. Moonlight drifted in through the stained glass window. This seemed to be the only place free from those cracks. If she squinted, she could almost see it, almost hear it. that head hitting each step with a loud thunk. Those eyes would never open again to lock upon a woman with scorn. The hand would never be raised to leave a mark on a pristine skin. The sound filled her with joy, and the thought of repeating that fateful night left her footsteps light with excitement. Malika, may I ask you a question? Certainly. Have you ever heard of a woman loving another woman as if a woman would love a man? Where did you hear about such a thing? Nowhere in particular, it's just a thought that came into my mind. I think you were overtired because of all the excitement, Amelie. I think it is best you get some rest. Yes, alright. Good night, Malika. Malika, who was seated on the edge of Amelie's bed, stood with unsteady feet. Standing in the doorway, she looked back at Amelie. Good night, Amelie. Tomorrow everything will be better, so sleep well. Malika steeled her resolve and stepped out of the bedroom. She first went back to the guest room and put her ear to the door. No sounds could be heard from behind it. Then she noticed something. Someone else walking down the hallway unsteadily. Malika followed closely behind through the darkness. The other person was only a shadow, their feature obscured and hidden. The sound of her light steps on the old wooden floorboards mixed in with the rain that was still raging just outside those walls. The kitchen was by the stairwell. That's right, by the stairwell, but you aren't going to the kitchen, are you? Hand-painted portraits were lined up in rows on either side of the hall. It seemed as if their eyes moved to follow Malika's every move. Sophia stared up to the grand staircase. She seemed as if she were entranced with each and every step. They're waiting for you. Those two people, they're calling for you. Go on, go to them. Sophia's unsteady hand reached for the banister. Her ascent was slow and careful, her eyes fixed on that door. That special door. The room where the maid had met her end and her most hated person rested beside her. The room where she had made a promise to the person she loved. Malika needed only to reach into the kitchen to procure the item that was waiting for her. Had been waiting for all this time. Sophia had been waiting for her all this time since Sophia had arrived. A knife with dark-edged stains over the blade and a hilt. Long had it sat there, festering, waiting, desperate for more blood. Like a hunter stalking her prey, Malika followed behind Sophia, the knife gripped tightly in her hand. Two stood side by side, staring at the door to the master bedroom. It was shut tight as it had been for countless years. Sophia trembled. With a smile, Malika reached over to give her arm a squeeze. Go on. You want to know the truth, don't you? You can hear their voices. I'll allow you this much. With a careful motion, Sophia pushed the door open. All at once, countless memories came flooding back, of love, hope, of the future, and of death. Sophia disappeared in the dark room, only light being a candle she carried in her hand. A family of mice ran out from the room and down the stairs. The taste of freedom was oh so sweet for them. More quiet than the mice that had escaped, Malika followed Sophia into the room. Wax dripped from the burning candle onto the wooden floor. She trembled as she reached a shaking hand to the bed. And at that same moment, Malika swung the door closed behind them, and the room plunged into darkness. But that darkness didn't matter for Malika, no, to she, who knew this room like the back of her hand. Amelie, is that you? Amelie isn't here to save you. Sophia's eyes searched the room to no avail. I'm sorry I came in here after you asked me not to. I'll just go now, okay? The pale-haired woman fell back on the bed before she had a moment to react. Yellow bones of the lord of the manor and the maid rattled underneath her, flesh long deteriorated. Malika smiled. How long has it been since I last saw myself truly? What? It looks like we're finally meeting, Sophia. The leg on either side of her, Malika held Sophia down to the bed, still smiling. She tried to squirm, to escape, to run free. Her eyes were filled with terror. You won't take her away from me. Sophia's scream became a muffled cry before finally extinguishing fully. Haha. Finally. My lady, did you see? Are you watching? I saved her. I saved Amelie. Only when Malika tried to stand did she notice it. A aged bone poking out from her stomach. Dark liquid dripped out from around her. With a slight frown, Malika pulled it free. Ugh. It's okay. It'll be okay. Malika closed her eyes. I'm just a little tired. Ugh. I'll just sleep for a bit. Her eyes grew heavy, so heavy. So heavy that only the option would be to sleep at this very moment. How could you do that? Like, Lalika, why? Why? Why would you hurt Amelie like that? Why did you kill Amelie? Ah! Her eyes opened with a start, her heart racing faster than it had ever raced before. The room seemed to be spinning and her head throbbing. Then she saw it. Lying on the bed between the two skeletons was the body of a young woman with long brown hair. Her dress was stained red. Amelie! No, that's not. Who did this? Who? Sophia! Amelie, wake up! Wake! She blinked and the young woman below her disappeared. In her place, Sophia appeared. The room was still dark. Not even a drop of sunlight peeked through the covered windows. Ha! Ha 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 ha! What a cruel trick of the eyes. She stepped out from the master bedroom just as Amelia did the same right next door. Good morning, Linka. I was just on my way to see if Sophia has awakened yet. Amelie. Sophia disappeared during the night. I believe she went to the same place your parents went. What? That cannot be right. Don't run, Amelie. Amelie dashed down the hall and knocked quickly on the door to the guest bedroom, which fell open with no resistance. Inside, the bed was disheveled and luggage was strewn about. It's not true. She wouldn't just leave without saying goodbye. Dear me. I'm sorry, I told you it was a bad idea for anyone to visit, didn't I? Oh, Lalika, this isn't fair. I thought she said we would... There, come here. Lalika wrapped her thin arms around the young woman, gently patting her on the back. See, you shouldn't depend on anyone else. I'm here. I won't ever leave you. Amelia clutched at her back, tears already falling from her eyes. We'll be together forever. Amelia froze in Lalika's arms before pulling back completely. What's happened to your face? My face? Lalika's hands went to her face instantly. Is something wrong? Amelia's expression had darkened, her mouth shut firmly in a line. My face? Pulling a small mirror from her pocket, Lalika finally saw it. A black void of nothingness where her face should have been. She turned and ran down the hall and up the stairs before Lalika could even call out after her. The void seemed to seep out from her very skin, oozing, leaking out from the wound at her stomach. That disease-ridden hag. Amelia, wait. It's okay. Everything will be Lalika's hand that reached out towards Amelia fell to her side. At the top of the staircase, in this manner, in the middle of a field, far out in the countryside, Amelia stood in an open doorway. A doorway that hadn't been opened to her in more years that she could truly imagine. And inside, she witnessed a sight she never should have. Her eyes hollow and her body petrified. Sophia! Amelia, this isn't... Stay away from me! Her long brown hair cascaded out around her as Amelia rushed into her bedroom, slamming the door behind her. Lalika rushed up the stairs, banging her fist against the locked door. Amelia, this is all a misunderstanding. She wanted to hurt you. I've saved you. She fell to her knees, her fists still pounding on the wooden door. A muffled sob came from within, then silence. The void surrounded Lalika, flowing from her wound and wrapping itself around her body. She curled into a ball. The sound of a chair hitting the ground inside the bedroom was the last sound Lalika heard before her eyes closed and she became one with the void.